In the dusty corner of a long-forgotten toy store, there was a character named Larry. Larry wasn't your typical hero. He was a middle-aged man with a paunch and a penchant for polo shirts. He had a love for old video games, especially those from the early 2000s. His eyes lit up when he saw a faded box with the words Candyland Racers 3 slapped across the cover. It was tucked away in a bin of board games, a peculiar find for a video game enthusiast. The box looked as if it had been there since the game's release, untouched by the hands of time. The store was a maze of plastic and cardboard, with shelves sagging under the weight of forgotten relics. Larry had to dig through a mountain of board games to get to the treasure trove of retro gaming hidden behind a curtain of cobwebs. His heart raced as he pulled out the last copy of the game, still sealed in its original packaging. The artwork on the box was cheerful and vibrant, showcasing cartoonish characters racing on candy-themed go-karts. It brought back a flood of childhood memories, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that filled the shop. Larry took the game home and inserted it into his dusty PlayStation 2, his hands trembling with excitement. The console whirred to life, and the screen flickered with a rainbow of colors. The cheerful intro music played, and the menu popped up with a jolly jingle, but something was off. There were way more options than he remembered from his youth. The game had a staggering 10,000 racetracks to choose from, each with a bizarre name that sent a shiver down his spine. He selected the first track, Gumdrop Galaxy, and waited for the race to begin. The game loaded, and Larry's living room was suddenly filled with a sense of dread that didn't quite match the sugary visuals. The racetrack unfolded before him, twisting and turning through a landscape of candy-coated horrors. The once bright colors of the game had faded into a dull, sickly palette that made his stomach turn. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to embark on a journey into something much darker than he had ever imagined. The race was about to start, and the only way out was through the game. As the countdown hit 0, the racers took off. Larry's avatar, a candy corn car, lurched forward into the fray. The other racers, once charming and childlike, had transformed into twisted monsters, their eyes gleaming with malevolence. The game's cheery theme song played in a distorted minor key, setting a tone that was far from the sweet nostalgia he was expecting. He watched in horror as the cartoonish characters began to attack each other, their once friendly gestures now tinged with a sadistic glee. The Gumdrop Galaxy track grew more disturbing with each passing second. The racers didn't just bump and honk, they used deadly weapons that materialized out of nowhere. Larry's candy corn car dodged a chainsaw thrown by a grinning lollipop, the blade slicing through the air with a digital screech. A gob of licorice whipped out, wrapping around a rival's wheels, sending them spiraling off the track into a pit of molten sugar. He gagged at the sight of a gummy bear impaled on a candy cane spike, its gelatinous form slowly melting into a pool of sticky despair. "What the fuck?" Larry yelled, his hand hovering over the power button. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This wasn't the Candyland of his childhood, it was a twisted nightmare, and he was stuck in the middle of it. The game had changed, and the stakes were no longer just who could reach the finish line first. It was a fight for survival, a macabre race where the prize was not just victory, but escaping with one's digital soul intact. Despite his horror, he felt a morbid fascination, a need to understand what he had stumbled upon. The race grew more intense, the candy corn car skidding around a corner as a candy apple racer's head exploded in a shower of pips and juice. The screen flashed red, and Larry's controller vibrated with each gruesome takedown. The game's innocent facade had been shattered, revealing a grisly underbelly that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. He knew he had to win, not just to prove he was the best, but to find a way out of this hellish game world that had ensnared him. The question was, could he stomach the carnage long enough to do so? The candy corn car screeched to a halt as the finish line loomed ahead. Larry's palms were slick with sweat, his eyes glued to the screen. The remaining racers, their vehicles now grotesque parodies of themselves, circled like sharks. One by one they fell, victims to their own vicious tactics. The final stretch was a gauntlet of horrors, each more stomach-churning than the last. Larry steeled himself, focusing on the prize, the sweet taste of victory turning bitter in his mouth. As he crossed the line, the game didn't just end. The screen warped and distorted, pulling him into the game. He felt his consciousness merge with the digital world, his body dissolving into a stream of pixels. The living room disappeared, replaced by a never-ending candy-coated highway. The game had swallowed him whole, and he was now a player in a very real game of life or death. The next racetrack, Jellybean Jungle, loaded with a sinister hiss. Larry's heart raced as the game's ominous theme grew louder. The once cheerful game had become a grim battle royale, and the only way to escape was to win. He took a deep breath, his thumbs poised over the controller, and braced for the next round of horrors that awaited him in the twisted world of Candyland Racers 3. The jungle canopy loomed above, the vines and leaves made of waxy fruit glistening with a sickly sheen. The air was thick with the scent of rotting sugar, and the candy animals that once cheered from the sidelines had morphed into hungry predators, eager to devour the unsuspecting racers. Larry's candy corn car roared to life, and he floored the gas pedal, racing through the treacherous terrain. The other racers had become a blur of malicious intent, their digital eyes locked on him. The track grew increasingly perilous with each lap, the jolly obstacles now deadly traps waiting to snare the unsuspecting. Larry's reflexes were pushed to the limit as he swerved between giant gumballs that rolled down the hill, threatening to crush him, and dodged candy snakes that lashed out from the underbrush. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the final stretch, the game's twisted sense of humor taunting him with a treacherous cliff's edge. Just as he thought victory was within reach, a shadowy figure emerged from the pack. It was a cart he had never seen before, a monstrous amalgamation of all the defeated racers. Its chassis was a twisted mess of licorice, and its wheels spun with the frenetic energy of sugar-high nightmares. The creature bore down on him, a cacophony of distorted laughter echoing through the speakers. Larry's grip tightened on the controller as the monster cart rammed him, sending him hurtling over the cliff's edge. The screen flashed "Game Over,"